Star Trek, the ultimate franchise. These are the podcasts of the Wakefield brothers. Their 16-year mission to watch every production, to seek out life lessons and new inspirations, to boldly watch like most fans have watched before. Welcome back to Temporal Directive. I'm your host, Gary.
And I'm Thomas.
And we're here to do our franchise-long rewatch of Star Trek. Yay! I'll insert...
Yeah, clapping sounds.
I'll insert applause at some point.
Yeah.
We are here for our first episode of Temporal Directive and our watch-through, and we are starting with the chronologically first entry, which is Star Trek Enterprise.
Yay.
We alluded last week that Star Trek Enterprise is not our favorite series of the franchise, but it's something that I've grown to appreciate over time.
He has.
And yeah, I'm interested to see how you feel about the show, because I know you haven't watched it for a long time, right?
Yeah, I haven't watched it. I sort of watched... I don't even know if I actually got through it all, to be honest. I don't know whether I got through the last season.
The best season.
Yeah, it probably is the best season, but you've got to get through the worst seasons to get to it. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how I go with it, because I watched it once and that was enough.
Yeah, well, we've got quite a few episodes, so we're talking about over a year commitment of watching Enterprise, Tom. So, yeah, buckle in, buddy.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say anything for Star Trek.
So we've got it's a new series. It's our first one, so I guess let's talk a little bit about Enterprise. It was created by Rick Berman, Brandon Braga, based on Star Trek, created by Gene Roddenberry, of course. Yep. Daddy Roddenberry. No, that sounds creepy.
What'd you say?
I said Daddy Roddenberry.
You could say Father.
The father
Roddenberry. Yeah, that sounds a little better than Daddy. Jesus.
Rick Berman and Brandon Braga are names that are pretty familiar with Star Trek fans.
Absolutely.
Rick Berman basically took over from Gene Roddenberry as a Star Trek kind of leader during the Next Gen era when Gene got sick and ultimately passed away. And he stayed through the end of this show. He was the showrunner for pretty much the whole Star Trek experience from then until the end of Enterprise in 2005.
Yeah. Done a bloody good job too.
Yeah. So this one was going to be a bit different. This was they decided on doing Enterprise. Voyager was coming to an end. They've had a lot of success with Next Generation. Deep Space Nine launched before the end of Next Gen. Voyager launched just after Next Gen finished. So there was Deep Space Nine and Voyager on at the same time. And then as Voyager was coming to an end, they wanted to do another series, but they didn't. They wanted to do something a little different.
Yeah.
So they made a prequel series, and it was an interesting choice. It was set before the original series, which is why we're watching it first. Obviously, this is the first story in chronological order, and it's set in 2151. So we're looking at about 100 years before Kirk and Spock's first 5-year mission. So it's early. So this episode, Broken Bow, was written by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga, directed by James L. Conway, who had directed 14 episodes of Star Trek before this one, so a bit of experience there. And this episode actually aired just 2 weeks after the 9/11 attacks in 2001. So it aired September 26, which was only 4 months after Star Trek Voyager had finished up in May. So there was not much of a gap between Voyager and Enterprise picking up. And I think from memory, and I could be wrong, but I think they were hoping to have a bit more time. I think they wanted to wait a season maybe to sort of flesh it out a little bit more and maybe just give the audience a bit of a break.
Yeah.
But studios be studioing.
Yeah,
And
well, that's it. Money, money, money.
yeah, and so it came out 4 months after Voyager, and yeah, I guess the opinions on how successful it was are pretty mixed. It lasted 4 seasons. The 3 series before it all lasted 7, and this pretty much was the end of that era of Star Trek for a long time. So yeah.
Wow.
So I thought I'll read the IMDb synopsis, and then we might talk about what we remember of this before we stop our recording and go and watch it.
Okay.
So IMDb, the synopsis says, in the mid 22nd century, the Earth ship Enterprise is launched under the command of Captain Jonathan Archer. When the crew rescues an alien from a crashed spaceship, Earth gets its first look at the alien's race, the Klingons. Archer and his crew must walk a fine line as they attempt to communicate with the Klingon pilot, whose language is completely unknown, and whose homeworld wants him back. Is this the beginning of friendship or interstellar war? So dramatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember this episode? And if you do, what do you remember?
I don't remember a lot, really.
Okay.
It's been a long time. I vaguely remember... I remember the characters. I remember Archer and the engineer. Trip, that's it. And the one who's trying to figure out the language. And that's about it. And the Vulcan. And how the Vulcans were all like not liking humans, essentially. Like putting a lot of pressure on the humans about everything.
I think the Vulcans would say like is irrelevant.
Yeah, well, that's probably true. Yeah, so raise an eyebrow, I'm sure. But that's about it, really. I don't remember a lot. Does the time thing happen at all in this, or is that later?
The time thing?
Yeah. Does that guy,
with
the shadowy guy,
yeah.
show up in this? Yeah, I thought that was pretty quick.
Yeah, from what I remember, he shows up. I think they don't even mention it in that synopsis, but the Suliban are introduced in this episode.
Yeah.
I remember the Suliban. I remember the Klingons. I remember this episode pretty well.
Yeah, okay.
And despite my feelings about Enterprise being kind of mixed, I actually think from memory, I think this is a pretty good premiere. I think when I first watched it, I was like, this is okay. Like, this is pretty solid.
Okay.
I think it's what happens after this episode that
sort of
made me go, this feels familiar.
Well, it was probably the same back when I was younger. Like, because I remember watching it, because I've watched it a couple of times. Like, I'd say that I've watched the first, say, 3 episodes. I've probably watched, say, 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, right.
Trying to get the show going, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I've probably watched that a few times over the years. But I do remember being excited for the show to come out.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't I be? It's new Star Trek, and it's been everything. So I was all excited for that, and I do remember liking it and being excited for it even after the first episode. So you're probably right there in the sense of the first episode was really good, or good. But then, you're right. After that, it went downhill.
Look, I mean, we're going to talk about each episode as we go, but my memory of this franchise is that I really struggled, and I think even with my obsessive nature, I don't think I got through this series when it first premiered. I think it was only maybe around the time of the like 2009 reboot movie that I was like, I kind of like this movie, but it doesn't feel like old Star Trek to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think I went hunting for something, and I found a couple of cool fan productions, which are not included in this because they're not canon.
Yeah.
But I also thought, I need to give Enterprise a proper watch through, and seeing how it ended. Well, I mean, apart from the finale, which was terrible, seeing where it got to in that last season really made me appreciate the characters and the progress a little bit more. So I think my view of Enterprise is probably a bit softer than yours.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, as much as and I'm going to talk about it even after we watch the series. But like I can't get over some of the acting. I just can't do it.
And look, this is going to be. We have some opinions that I don't think are very shared with some of the rest of the franchise,
and that's fine. That's fine. I mean, that's why we're here, right? I mean, people, if people want to hear it, they can hear it. If they don't, then turn it off.
Turn it off. Yeah, find a podcast that fits into your world.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like I said before, even about Denise Crosby, I don't know these people,
No.
and they're absolutely lovely people from what I can tell, outside their careers or whatever it is. But in the world of Star Trek, you know, because it's such a big thing for me and obviously you, but for me, because it's such a big thing, I have a higher standard.
Yeah.
So, you know, when Scott Bakula doesn't get a line right, I'm not happy.
Yeah. Well, again, this is going to be a hot take every week, I think, for the first couple of years of this podcast. It's going to be a controversial take. So yeah, anyway, let's pause and go watch Broken Bow and come back.
Yep. All right.
We'll be back in a minute. And we're back from watching Broken Bow. Well, first reactions. What did you think, Tom? How did you find the episode?
I survived it. No, it was actually pretty good. It was better than I remembered, which is surprising.
Yeah, it was better than I remembered too. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I remember, like I said before we watched it, I remember thinking that it was a good premiere, and my opinion hasn't changed. I think that was a pretty solid start to a different type of Star Trek. There are a few things in it I didn't like.
Yeah, of course.
But overall, I thought that was I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Absolutely, it was much better than I was expecting for the rewatch.
Cool. All right, well, let's go through it. So it opens up with a young Jonathan Archer with his dad building a model ship, and the first line of the whole series is "Where no man has gone before."
Surprise, surprise.
I mean, you know, I get it. Is it a little cheesy? Yeah, but you know, if anyone listened to our theme song, we like the cheese.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of, you know, it's expected. I like it.
But he did refer to the Vulcan as Ambassador Pointy.
Yeah, he did, which is
specious.
Yeah, and I suppose his dad had a lot of negativity towards Vulcans for a good reason that comes up throughout the entire episode. So, you know, it might have been a point.
Was that a pun? Was that an intentional pun?
Tried.
And then it jumps to 30 years later, and we're in the town of Broken Bow in Oklahoma, and there's a Klingon. Even though this show is pre-original series, the Klingons have got that pronounced forehead ridges that didn't actually appear until the motion picture.
Especially in the early, like obviously when they first saw it, it shouldn't have happened, in my opinion, because Klingons didn't have the ridges on their foreheads before the motion picture at all. So it was unusual to see them.
Yeah.
So seeing them again just reminds me of how annoyed I was back then.
There's a Deep Space Nine episode where they travel back in time, and Worf acknowledges the fact that there was a difference in the Klingons, but we don't talk about it with outsiders.
Exactly.
And so they've acknowledged in universe that there is
something.
And spoilers, I know you haven't seen the rest of Enterprise, but they do talk about that later on. So it does come into the storytelling later on. There is a Klingon who we later find out is named Klang, who's being chased through the corn by some aliens that we later again find out are called Sulaban. Yeah. To me, they look like smallpox aliens.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely riddled. They need some of that, they need pimple cream or something.
They need some cream.
Yeah,
they need
absolutely.
some cream.
Poor things.
They need something.
Got to be uncomfortable.
But yeah, the design is cool, kind of creepy and different, which is nice. Some weird, real CG of the time when they slide under the door.
Yeah.
But again, it's a product of its time.
Of its time, exactly. I mean, you watch anything from then.
Yeah, but I loved the Klingon costume. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
There was a lot of that sort of old school vibe to it, but still kept it in like within canon of the later Klingon series. So yeah, I really liked the Klingon costume.
I mean, I could go into Klingons because I have a whole love and hate with the Klingons and the new Klingons in
Discovery.
Yeah,
well, that's not. Yeah, we'll get there soon.
Yeah, we'll get there because I have a love-hate relationship with what they did there. But but I do like the costuming in this one. It was quite good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then, of course, it jumped to the opening because it's a new series, so we'll talk about the opening theme. And I hate this. I hate this song.
Yeah.
I don't mind the visuals. I think the visuals of like moving through history and travel and stuff is really cool.
That's a fantastic idea, especially for what they were trying to do and show the fact that it is the start of what we've seen, sort of thing. I think it's a great idea visually. The song is a terrible choice. Terrible.
Faith of the Heart. It sounds like we've tuned into Christian radio or something.
Exactly.
I hate it.
It is absolutely just it's just misappropriated.
From this episode on, we are skipping intro.
Yeah, we know what it is. We've talked about it. We don't like it. We're moving on.
So then we see Archer and Trip in the little pod as they're doing a bit of an inspection on their way to Enterprise, making sure the paint job is right. And Archer gets summoned to Earth to meet with the admirals. And an admiral refers to Klang as a Klingot.
Klingot. I think it was quite good to see that the admirals basically needed backup from Captain because they knew the Captain was going to stand up to the Vulcans more than they were willing to. So he was going to put his foot down and sort of have a bit more of a go at the Vulcans. So I actually quite liked that to show that Archer was going to be a bit more forceful with what he's going to do.
But isn't it the admiral's job?
It is, but they've got to be more political, don't they?
I guess.
So they're the ones that have to sort of sit around the meeting tables.
Yeah.
Whereas Archer's the one who
wants to get out there.
Yeah, wants to get out there and do it. So it's sort of, I think that plays to the character a little bit more. So I quite liked that.
Okay. And one of the lines I think Archer said was something about the Vulcans pushing us back again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah, pushing back the launch of the ship again. So just more evidence of that. Vulcans holding people back, holding humans back from doing what they want to do. And I really enjoyed when Archer said something about logic. When your logic doesn't work, you raise your voice. You've been on Earth too long.
Yeah, that was good.
That was a good line. Right, and then he got the okay to go, so he started recruiting everyone. So let's go and get Ensign Hoshi Sato from Brazil. Yep. Let's get her on board. So we see, as well as Hoshi, we also are introduced to Mayweather and Lieutenant Reed. And they're talking about the transporter not just being approved for biomatter.
Yeah.
And hoping that means fruits and vegetables and not people, but they're talking about people.
And I liked how they talked about even Archer wouldn't put his dog through it, and how in the Kelvin universe, the dog gets through it and they lose his prize beagle.
Yeah, it's good.
It was great.
And also the uniforms. This is the first proper look at the Starfleet uniforms of this era as well. And they've got those jumpsuits with the little coloured stripe over the shoulders.
Yeah.
And the Enterprise patch on the shoulders as well, on the arms. I quite like the uniform. Do you like that look?
I do. I think it looks good for the time. I think it's actually quite a good look because it's a bit more industrial, I suppose.
It feels like NASA.
Yeah,
it's a progression of NASA.
Yeah, exactly. It feels a little bit more useful, a little bit more comfortable, workers.
Yeah.
And I liked the Zephyr Cochrane bit.
So do we jump to the speech to launch the Enterprise and the Warp 5 engine and Zephyr Cochrane's speech, which is excellent.
Yeah, it was done well, and it felt sort of very fluid within the universe, which I liked.
Yeah.
And I love that the same actor has played Zephyr Cochrane a couple of times throughout the series, so it sort of gels that together. I know he's played other characters as well.
Yeah,
but,
James Cromwell's played a few characters.
Yeah, but I just like that he's redone Zephyr Cochrane.
You also might not know, but Zephyr Cochrane also is in the original series, not played by James
Yes,
Cromwell.
I do.
Okay,
I do.
right.
Yeah, because he's a younger guy too, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they find him on a planet. Yeah, I do. I remember.
Yeah. And then just as Archer's sitting on the ship about to take off, he has a flashback to his youth again with his dad and his little model ship, which keeps coming back. I'm not sure why, but I do know why. I just don't like it.
Just, it just doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't sort of fit to the rest of what's going on as far as I'm concerned.
No, but we get a great shot of the Enterprise leaving the dock and getting detached and flying out, which is a really nice shot of that ship, which I quite like the design.
The ship design is actually quite good. It does make you really feel like it's a precursor to the other ships.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, really good.
Yeah. And then it cuts to the helix, or looks like a little hive almost of Suliban pods, all linked together, and we see a Suliban agent, I guess, talking to a mysterious figure that's got a funny voice and he's all distorted and shadowy, who I don't know. I think this is what they used to call him they used to call him Future Guy in all the write-ups about him. So that's what I'm going to refer to him as Future Guy.
Okay.
So yeah, he's getting orders from Future Guy, who's telling him to find out what Klang knew and whatever, and go and get Klang. Like, this isn't okay that the humans have him. Go and get him. So off they pop.
Hopefully not over the mirror.
And then we cut to Dr. Phlox, who's setting up his sick bay, has a conversation with the captain, and maybe my least favourite line of the entire show is Dr. Phlox channeling his Galaxy Quest voice, and he says, "Optimism, Captain!" and has this huge, big, fake CGI smile. And, like, I like this guy. I like this doctor. Like, I think he's fine. He's good.
Yeah.
But fuck.
Yeah.
Optimism, Captain. What the? Just stop.
It definitely puts you in place for him, doesn't he? Like it is his character to be that real optimistic and cheery and all that kind of stuff. But
for sure,
it's literally throwing it in your face. Like,
yeah. So after sickbay, we cut to Mayweather hanging upside down, or sitting upside down in the sweet spot of the ship, and Trip comes in and they have a bit of a chat, and Trip refers to Mayweather as a boomer because he's someone who grew up in space, which I thought was an interesting, like, I mean, we have baby boomers now that we talk about boomers.
Yeah.
To think that it comes back around.
Yeah, true. Very true.
And then we cut to dinner with the captain, T'Pol and Trip having dinner with Captain Archer and his little galley, and T'Pol talks about Vulcans not touching their food, and she's cutting up that breadstick.
The breadstick. I mean,
I did like that she referred to humans as impulsive carnivores.
Yes.
It's like, is she? I feel targeted. Like that. I feel like she's describing me right now.
Don't get offended.
I'll try not to. And then, but she's cutting up a breadstick with a knife and fork.
It's just the whole scene just felt a little bit forced, as far as I'm concerned. Like, they were trying to make a point that they've already made throughout the episode about humans and being impulsive and being a little bit backwards and all that kind of stuff. They've already made that point multiple times already, and then
they're
they
just
put them in a room and
reinforcing
they're
it.
trying to reinforce it. Yeah, but it was pointless and so small because it was a breadstick and meat. Like, it was silly. It was unnecessary. I didn't like it.
Okay, that's fine
compared to other episodes.
Sure. And then they cut to the bridge, and we're pushing the warp engines up to I think 4.5. Hoshi was freaking out because at each point that started to shake a little bit and there was some trouble, so she was freaking out a little bit. And the Klingon wakes up and she gets asked to go down to sickbay, so off she pops down there and tries to talk to this Klingon person who
has been hit in the head, like has been unconscious for a while and has damage.
Yeah. So isn't really speaking proper words anyway, and she's trying to interpret that. But they do get a little bit of information from the guy.
Pretty much just the name Suliban when they come onto the ship.
Well, yeah, that's the next thing that happens. There's the comm panel goes off and they drop out of warp and all the power goes off and they're boarded by Suliban agents who climb all over the ceiling and the walls and like Spider-Man with smallpox and can vanish. They've got chameleon powers so they can like disguise themselves and hide. And so there's a bit of a fight and they kidnap the Klingon and take him hostage.
Yep.
So T'Pol argues that the mission is over. Like, you've lost the Klingon, let's just go home. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm sick of smelling you humans. I want to go home. And Archer says, absolutely no way. We are not telling Starfleet Command this. We are just going to go find our Klingon. We are going to go find him and finish our mission.
Yep.
Then we cut to an alien autopsy scene, which reminded me of that. Did you ever watch that grainy old video?
Yeah, I think I've got it on DVD at home, actually.
So we find out about the genetically modified Suliban and what kind of cool powers they have.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting, but gross. So after the autopsy, we've got T'Pol and Tripper in engineering, and they're talking about they're trying to trace the plasma.
Yep.
And T'Pol says that Vulcan children play with toys more sophisticated than this equipment.
Yeah.
Bitch.
Yeah, I know. Like, how offensive. And like, but then about the arguments about them holding back the humans all this time. I mean, no, of course we haven't. But but you'll let us go out with toys. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thanks for your help.
Yeah. You really have our best interest in heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Archer comes into the conversation, and then Hoshi comes in and says, "Are you sure it's okay to stand so close to the engine?" She just seems so scared of everything. What is she doing out there?
She's petrified.
Did she know what she was signing up for?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
she knew this was space, right?
Yeah. Like a tiny little pinhole and you're dead, love.
But during that conversation, T'Pol reveals that Rigel 10 was the last place that the Klingon went before crashing on Earth. And Archer gives her a bit of a lecture about not holding on to information, and if she does that again, she'll end up in the brig.
Essentially,
good dynamics. Like, this is really good character dynamic stuff, I think. So they decide to go to Rigel 10. But yeah, I really like the character interactions, even though it's still highlighting that same stuff that we've talked about Vulcans and humans not getting along and those things. But the way that Archer and T'Pol interact with each other, I really like.
And I think that's good. And I think they really I suppose they did that on purpose for the first episode at least.
Yeah.
Because Vulcans are meant to be fairly good with us in the history of Star Trek. So what we've seen, Vulcans and humans are very fluid. Like, that's all part of it, Whereas in this series, we need to really get the point that Vulcans are not really friendly with us at this time. Like, there's a lot of tension between the two.
They're just kind of like, they're kind of like nervous parents, aren't they? Like, they want their kids to grow up and be good, but they're also, don't want them to leave home.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. There's that real tension thing happening there. Where they're like, we don't want you to go out and get too overwhelmed with what's going on and cause a whole heap of shit that they have to then clean up. So I get it. I get sort of why, at least in this episode, why that's such a heavy point to be putting on people, because we're so used to Vulcans and humans being so connected, and on such a friendly basis. I mean, you got Spock and you've got Kirk, and you can't get better friends than that.
Yeah.
So you need to show that they're sort of at, going to be at opposite ends.
I get what you're saying. So we get to Rigel 10 and they head down to the trade complex in their away mission jackets, which were pretty sweet. So they're in that market space, which is, again, something that we don't see a lot in Star Trek. This looked like a pretty cool little market area. There was dancing girls with these big long tongues that were catching butterflies to eat.
Yeah.
I thought that was a bit weird, but it was cool. It was different.
Yeah.
But those two Starfleet officers, clearly humans haven't been out in the world much because they're just mesmerized by these two girls.
Clad alien females.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were quite hypnotized.
They were.
Yeah.
But they got on with it.
Yeah.
And we see T'Pol talking to someone while Trip's in a sort of a waiting area. It looked like he's waiting to go in or something. Yeah, he was in a waiting area.
You know what that waiting area reminded me of while I was sitting there? The waiting room in Beetlejuice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. I didn't see any shrunken hands.
No, there was boxes moving and sort of different weird aliens and stuff. It just reminded me heavily of that.
But there was that kid that couldn't breathe, so this woman keeps putting a mask on this kid, and Trip's getting more and more upset by it and keeps looking back at them, and then sort of has a go at her, like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And T'Pol explains that there are species that need to wean off that kind of
they only
air.
Breathe that one kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, so they're actually trying to do something beneficial. And she says this great line about how humans need to learn to objectify alien species so they know when to interfere and when not to. And I thought that's one of the lessons out of this episode is you cannot make assumptions based on your experience and your knowledge. It's someone else's experience and their
way of doing something.
Yeah, is unique to them because of their experiences. So why would you judge that, or why would you put impose your values or your views on someone?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a very good line.
Yeah. And then they keep looking for the Klingon area of this marketplace or this trade complex. And they find the Klingon area. Hoshi and Archer get attacked by Suliban. And then they get taken to this holding cell, and Archer gets taken to Saren, who is an ex-member of the Suliban Cabal. Yep. And she's the one that gave Klang this information. This is a bit of the exposition kind of scene where she says, she gave evidence to Klang that the fighting that was going on in the Klingon homeworld was instigated by the Suliban as agents in a temporal Cold War.
Yeah.
A lot of information in a very short time.
Yeah. I covered all this other stuff, and then we'll give you that in 2 seconds.
So she's a good person, but of course the captain gets to make out with the alien of the week.
Yeah, gets to kiss her.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, sorry, she just kisses him for no reason as far as you're concerned when it first happens, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, and then once they kiss, she changes into a Suliban appearance with the makeup effects coming in.
Couldn't do
and
that.
then he says, I swear that's never happened before, or something along those lines, which I thought was a funny line. It was pretty good. But there's a temporal Cold War. The Suliban agents are taking orders from the distant future. And that's all the information she kind of had. Mm. And then the Cabal, the Suliban Cabal attack, and they have to try to escape, and then we get the pew 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 fighty stuff.
Yep.
Which is pretty good. It was well shot, well executed. They run through to a elevator that takes them up to the roof where there's a lot of snow. There's a big fight. Archer gets shot in the leg. Once he's shot, T'Pol says that she's going to take command of Enterprise. Yeah. Which everyone goes, what are you doing? Like, this isn't okay.
Who are you?
Then, I think that conversation actually takes place in the decon chamber.
Which another just ridiculous scene. Which
look, it's gratuitous. Yeah. Like, it is so not Star Trek-y. I don't know. And my memory of Enterprise is that there's quite a bit of this happening throughout the series, so we better get used to this decontamination set.
Yeah.
But it's not something that has been used much in Star Trek. There's not usually gratuitous,
overly sexualized stuff.
No, not usually.
No, not
but
usually.
here they are rubbing
Gel on each other.
glitter gel on each other's bodies.
Yeah,
which is just not Star Trek.
No, it's not Star Trek, and it's completely pointless.
But it might be pointless to some people. Some people might quite enjoy those scenes. And like I'm not saying I object to them, but it just highlights the difference in this show compared to the series that have all just happened.
Yeah.
So you got Next Gen, DS9, and Voyager, which didn't have anything similar to this, and then this is an older school kind of version of what would now just be a filter in the transporter system.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
that is true.
But yes, as far as an audience perspective, it's gratuitous and it's whatever. But the conversation that T'Pol and Trip have is great. I think it's a really good scene because they're, despite the nudity and the touching of each other, the conversation that they're having is like the antithesis of that. So they're at odds and they're arguing while they're doing these intimate touching and being vulnerable with each other at the same time. So it's quite I actually quite like the scene, even though I think it is a bit gratuitous.
Yeah.
But Trip talks about how Captain Archer deserves to have his mission be fulfilled or whatever, and she listens.
Yeah.
So we cut to sickbay. Archer wakes up and T'Pol says that she's taking command, and he's like, "Oh, great! How long till we're back at Earth? Because I'm sure that's what you would have done." And she says that they haven't done that. They're actually on their way to find Klang.
Yeah, following the Zulaban.
Exactly. Yeah. So Trip got through to T'Pol, and she did the right thing. Then we cut to Archer in his quarters doing a really awkward personal log where he pauses and talks to himself a fair bit.
Talks to the dog.
But I don't know if you noticed on the shelf behind him there was a Zephram Cochrane statue of him
the
reaching
bronze,
up to the stars.
The bronze one,
yeah, just like Geordie described in First Contact.
Yeah.
So it looked like that, which was excellent.
Yeah, it was. It was good. It was well placed.
Yeah. So we follow the Sulaban to a gas planet, and they discover that the Sulaban are hiding within that gas planet. Then we cut to this extra scene of Future Guy talking to that Sulaban guy, trying to get information, getting an update for the Future Guy's trying to get an update of what's happening. And he says we didn't plan to include the humans or the Vulcans at this point. So, like, fix your shit. Like, this isn't what we planned. Like, fix it. So we cut back to the Enterprise. They're flying into the gas. They find the helix, the station, whatever you want to call it. I think they refer to it as a helix.
I think so, yeah.
And there's a terrible line that I really hate where they're getting shot at and Trip calls up like, "What's going on?" And the captain says, "Just a little trouble with the bad guys."
Yeah.
It's not I don't like it. I just don't like it.
It's littered with little things like that, isn't it?
But they get into a fight. There's a bit of shooting, pew pew, and then they use their grappler to steal a Sulaban ship. And one of the Sulaban agents parachutes out in a liquid layer of the planet. But that's weird.
Parachuting in liquid. Yeah.
Okay. So they steal the ship, and then they do a really quick lesson on how to drive it, and then they take that to the helix in order to go and get Klang. They dock, explore the helix. Archer gets Trip and Klang to get onto the little Sulaban pod to go back to the Enterprise, and then uses a maglock disruptor thing that they've got, but doesn't think about the time it takes to travel back to the pod, so hits go and then doesn't have enough time to get off, So
stupid.
So yeah,
So what did you expect was going to happen? Like,
Yeah.
you know, there was a timer on it. He turned a timer thingy.
I know.
I was just like, seriously.
Yeah. So the maglock activates, the maglock device activates, and all of all those little pods and stuff that were making this helix all detach from the central core, and Trip and Klang are off in their pod to go back to Enterprise. Hoshi uses her special hearing skills to discover where the shuttle is in all the noise, and they save them. And then they have to go get Archer, so they take Enterprise back to the helix. And Archer goes into the temporal war room. I don't know what else to call it. But he walks in and everything's all distorted, and like there's this weird visual echo of his movements and stuff.
Which is quite a good effect. I actually really like that effect. It's done really, really well.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah, and for the time, you wouldn't sort of expect it either. Like it was a new thing back then when you first watched it. Like that kind of effect was trippy.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. I think they did do something like that in Next Gen though.
Did they?
So yeah, I don't think it was that new.
I don't remember that.
It's pretty cool. Archer's in the war room, being all distorted, and the Suliban guy shows up, and they have a bit of a conversation.
But the Suliban was going to let him go.
Yeah,
Like he opened the door and said, "Off you pop," basically.
yeah,
And he would have done that if Archer hadn't have said, "I know about your temporal war."
yeah,
That's when he went, "Oh shit," and then was gonna try and kill him. So that was interesting. Like sort of like
because it was only about the information that Klang had. It had nothing to do. This guy didn't want to fight Archer.
No.
Didn't want the humans to be involved. That's what Future Guy told this Suliban guy.
Exactly.
Like, we don't want the humans involved, so stop it.
yeah. So it was all gonna. He would have been able to walk away. So
He
that
would
was
have.
interesting. Yeah.
But then, just as he's about to shoot Jonathan or Captain Archer, he gets beamed up from the Enterprise and has this look on his face like, "Holy shit! Did you just beam me?
Yeah. Like, what did you do?
How dare you? What is this magic?" But yeah,
I would have rather get shot. Come on.
you should have just let me get shot. But then it cuts to Kronos, so it's obviously a couple of days later because they said it was going to be a 4-day flight or something.
Yeah, 80-hour flight from Earth.
So they get to Kronos, they take the Klang to the High Council. The design of the Klingon planet was pretty cool. I really liked the interior.
Yeah, me too.
Very, very next gen-y era Klingon.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Wow.
One of the Klingons comes over, slices Klang's hand and gets a drop of blood and then analyzes it, and that's where this encoded message is kept in his blood.
Yeah.
So mission accomplished. They've got Klang back, then the information has been delivered, just as was expected. Yay!
All good.
Yay, humans! So Archer's back in his ready room with his dog, Porthos, and he has been given orders to keep going, basically, and says that he would like T'Pol to stay, but doesn't want to be the one to ask.
Yeah, which was, yeah.
Which, I guess, like, humans want to prove something.
Yeah.
And if you ask for help, are you still proving something?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to what I said about in the first instance where they sort of brought him in to have a bit of a go with the Vulcans. So then that's sort of who he is to the admirals and the other people around him. So then if he then asks to have a Vulcan on his ship, then that sort of makes it look a bit funny to the rest of the people above him. So I think it's a bit more to do with a bit of that in my head.
Yeah.
So, so I liked that.
Good. And then we get that stupid line about we can't be afraid of the wind, Ensign. Oh, I shouldn't say stupid. I'm being too judgy.
No, well, that's what you're here for. But it is sort of stupid because it's like it's sort of that, it's try and do hard sort of stuff, I think. Like we get it.
So I think one of the things we talked about doing in each episode is talking about the life lessons. What life lesson do you think we got out of this episode?
Well, I think, I guess it's all about the taking a step forward, isn't it? Really, that's what this series is about. But this episode especially is about taking risks, taking that step, and moving on, like moving forward. Sort of what I got out of it anyway. Is
Yeah, not being held back by fear.
That's right. You know, not being held back by fear or other people, or other. You know, if you have a goal or you want to do something, then you can sort of take it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, I agree. It's very much about that, and also I think at the end there was a conversation between Archer and T'Pol about letting go of misconceptions and grudges. And just moving forward. So, so not just being held back by fear, but letting go of those ideas.
Being able to grow and learn new things and accept that.
Yeah. And I think Star Trek does a good job of putting these sort of morality issues and stories into its storytelling. But I think sometimes with these bigger episodes, it's less about that and more about setup.
Absolutely.
And I felt like this episode was more about let's get these characters set up rather than let's explore something with them.
Yeah, something within their humanity.
But I think they did a good job of setup. Like I really,
absolutely.
Overall, I think it was a great episode. I love the new designs, and I love the uniforms. I love the design of the ship. I don't have any criticisms about any of that.
The Klingons are a bit of a touchy subject, but overall I think it's quite good, and I think I don't think they stepped too far out of the mark with that kind of thing. I think it was pretty good.
Yeah. Please do not hesitate to get in touch and share your thoughts on the episode that we watched this week, or just in Star Trek in general. We're here because we love Star Trek, and we're here because we want to talk about Star Trek. And if you want to talk about Star Trek too, please get in touch. Absolutely. We'd love to hear from you.
Ask questions, do whatever.
You can reach out to us via email at wakefield_productions@outlook.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Temporal Directive. And then next week, we're watching Enterprise Fight or Flight. So we will be back next week to check that out. So we'll see you next week. Live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.